off-going nurse said we start our shift with, rounding. So the nurses actually lead our rounds with the physician. So we read off of a script and we talk about the things that we think are important for the day. And then the doctors kind of chime in after us. So that's something that we do unique at UCLA. We're the ones that started that with nurse-led rounds because our opinion is very valuable. We're at the bedside 24/7. Doctors, they have their value as well, but they come in sort of as needed. And, we're the ones that pick up on those subtle changes that could save a patient's life, if we feel something's off, even if it's an intuition,
Are you monitoring that?
We started that at UCLA, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And is there a story behind that?
Not an interesting one.
But how about a technical one? But how about when you've done something like what you just explained, has it, developed into saving someone's life?
All the time. It's almost always the nurse who says, something just doesn't feel right. Like this kid's acting a little different. It's the nurse and it's the parent.
And so give us an example. When is that? Tell us an example of when that happens.
Well, without divulging any personal information,
right.
Which would be illegal.
Right, don't do that. Got two lawyers in there.
Right. So, let's see. I had a patient once who was just fussing. It was a younger baby and just crying and crying and crying and crying. And the doctors were like, he's a baby. He's going to cry. And, and something just didn't feel right about this particular cry. I feel like I'm a baby whisperer of sorts.
Nice.
Like I can tell, that's not really a cry. It's a different type of cry.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really explain it other than it just doesn't seem
like
right.
An intuition kind
and
of
the mother of the baby was actually on the same page as me, which they almost always are because they have that same intuition of, this just doesn't seem like it's going very well, or it doesn't seem normal for my baby. It might be normal if you walked into another patient's room, but for my baby, this isn't normal. And then later on in the shift, that patient had to get intubated and, he ended up being okay. But
so it was a life-saving exercise on your part.
Absolutely.
For doing that. We're Larry and Rob Mandel, the brothers-in-law, here on Go Country 105. Do you have a legal issue you need help with? We want to hear from you. Find us on Instagram and send us a message. Then tune in on Saturdays at 8 a.m. right here on Go Country 105. How proactive should the parents be, especially in a pediatric ward?
Very much so. They are truly their child's advocate. And I tell that to every parent that I come across, that you are the last line of defense, for your child. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword because I think parents also need to care for themselves. And I feel like in the ICU, not a lot of parents leave their baby's bedside to care for themselves. But I wouldn't if it were my child, you just have to, you're their voice when they don't have one. So,
that's right.
And as nurses, we try to allow the parents to take that break when they can so that we become the child's voice in their absence.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. So they'll stay in the room.
Yes.
Except for the ICU, they're allowed to stay there?
No, we don't have visiting hours. We don't have a lot of rules and restrictions on visitors because it's holistic care. It's part of that child's life and the parents need to be there and and a lot of times the babies will stop crying when they feel their mom come closer or their dad, they can sense that
it's got to be the roughest thing going for a parent. That's to see your child in that bad of straits that they're in an ICU.
Absolutely.
And even though you got wonderful people like yourself in the mix, it's got to be gut-wrenching. So for you, it's gut-wrenching on two levels. You see the child's pain and you see the parent's anguish.
100%.
And you have to be a little bit of a psychologist, too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're best friends, psychologists, manicurists sometimes. We'll paint our kids' nails if we can, we're all those things to the patients and their family.
So what would be your advice to a mom or a dad out there that's has a sick child in that situation? What should they expect? What should they do?
Just be your child's advocate. Don't always take what advice is given to you to heart. Question everything.
Question everything.
Do your own research. Don't, we see kind of both extremes of families that are just like, sure, do whatever. And, it's not always the right thing. And then some families who kind of don't allow the care team to
kind of interfere a little
bit.
So you want to be an advocate. Right. You want to be an advocate, but don't interfere.
Right.
Yeah, but I also think that the parents should be respectful too, because I've seen situations. Yeah, that's what I meant. Where they're just kind of on you and they're kind of screaming and being a little bit
and
overboard.
that impedes the care.
Yeah.
So, there's definitely a balance. Like, I wouldn't say just to blindly take everything and run with it, but also, respect their training.
How long does it take to become a nurse?
So I kind of took a unique approach where I went to community college for 2 years, and then I'm now getting my bachelor's degree like 12 years later, because back then you didn't need a bachelor's degree
to be an RN.
Yeah. You could sit for your boards. But I just decided I wanted to get mine and finish what I started years ago. So it depends. If you go straight from high school, it's a 4-year bachelor's degree, but there's a lot of different ways to become a nurse.
But I mean, is typically the degree you're getting in nursing?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have my associate's degree in nursing, and I'm almost finished with my bachelor's of science in nursing. And then there's a master's of science in nursing. You can become a nurse practitioner, nurse educator, nurse PhD. I mean, there's a doctor nurse.
There's quite a bit. There's quite a bit to nursing.
Oh, yeah.
I got to tell you, Rob, one time I was in the hospital, and it was kind of a serious condition, and I just had this one nurse, and I just loved her, and I just felt like she walks in the room, and I was actually in ICU at the time, and I was like, thank God she's back. She's here. Yeah, she's my angel. Do you have that feeling from some of your patients?
Yes, absolutely. Especially with kids, when their face lights up instead of, usually the first time you're meeting them, they scream when they see you come in.
Because you're not mom.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're just like, hi, how are you? You're in their face, and they're like, who is this lady? And sometimes we do have to do things that don't feel so good, even though they're to help. But it's amazing when you walk in a room and their face actually lights up for the first time after tears.
Have you suffered or been injured by someone else's negligence? When you need a legal team that will stand up for what is right, won't give up the fight and obtain justice, call 818-886-6600. Mandel Trial Lawyers specializes in personal injury cases of all types. Whether it's a car accident, product or premises liability, dog bite, or a catastrophic injury, Mandel Trial Lawyers are there for you when the fight is worth it. Call now for your free consultation. 818-886-6600. Let the scales of justice tip in your favor.
That there's such a high duty and high level of reliance on the patient. And is that what when you were talking about burnout, is that what you're talking about? Is that, having that responsibility day in, day out, hour after hour?
Absolutely. I mean, if a lot of jobs, if you make a mistake, it costs a lot of money, or, a lot of people can suffer. But in nursing and in the medical field, if you make a mistake, it's someone's life, and especially a child's life. And, unfortunately, I have seen mistakes made that are detrimental.
Right. How do they avoid the mistakes? Or is it now elevated to where everything's so computerized and you can look at, a patient's chart, through the computer, as opposed to the back in the day when it's just like a handwritten chart?
So I started back in the day when it was handwritten, and I missed that partly because right now with the computers, I feel like it takes an element of the human aspect out of it, and I don't like relying on computers. I'm a paper and pencil kind of girl. So it can be challenging because a lot of people, newer nurses that are coming on that are just familiar with the technology, will just come in and scan things and not really look at the name and, relying too much on that technology. So
stay connected with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and of course, brothersonlaw.com. What are the patient's rights? What are the kids' rights? What are the parents' rights from your perspective?
From my perspective, I mean, pediatrics is unique in the sense that you usually have a guardian, so you can't really make your own decisions. Not that they're begging to, but
Right.
you do have to turn to the family or the guardian in some cases for consent. So when they come into the hospital, from what I know, I mean, luckily, nurses don't deal a lot with legalities and insurance and all that type of stuff because we're focused on, caring for the patient only. But from what I do know, we get consents for everything. And it's usually at the beginning of the hospital stay, consenting for blood transfusion and all those types of things. There have been times that I'm aware of where if a family does not want to consent to a life-saving intervention, two physicians can sign something that would legally say
Override that.
Is that like an advance directive?
It's a little different. It's more of like in the moment. If they do have advanced directives, it's not as common in pediatrics, but it's more of like in the moment, especially in the ICU when something is about to, is going down and the family